Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan Calmetto. I'm from the Area Agency on Aging 1B. I'm going to go over some quick webinar housekeeping issues before we get started to help improve your experience. So hopefully you can see my screen and you can see the actual PowerPoint. All right, so again, just some housekeeping items. This slide shows you what you should see on your computer. To the left, you have the presentation viewer. This is where you'll watch our PowerPoint. And then to the right, you'll see your control panel or the attendee panel. On the attendee panel, you're able to actually ask questions throughout the presentation, which we'll likely address at the end of the meeting. And I'll go over that in just a moment as well. A closer look at the panel. On the top, you see different audio options, so please note that throughout the presentation, you can switch between audio options if need be. Right now, you can see it selected at microphone and speakers. This is for your computer, so you can hear and interact directly through your speakers, although your microphone is muted. You can also call in using the telephone line, so if you select telephone, it'll give you the number to call in and the access code. Below the audio box, you see a question panel. And during the presentation, you can simply type a question in the bottom box, hit send, and it'll come through to both Marshall and I. And again, we'll review those at the end of the meeting. I also want to draw your attention to one last option. You see here on the left-hand side of your screen a red arrow pointing to the blue circle with a yellow hand in it. You can actually raise your hand by hitting this button, and then that'll signal to us that you have a comment or a question. And then I can go through and unmute your phone at the end, and you can ask your question, and we can have responses that way as well. So hopefully there's going to be different ways for you to interact. Hopefully they work. Usually they do. So let's get it started. This will be recorded. And I also want to make the note up front that all home heating credit applications are due to the state by September 30th, 2015. They have to be postmarked by that date. This training was put together with the Area Agency on Aging 1B and the Accounting Aid Society, really to help those who are working with older adults in senior housing complexes to complete the home heating credit. I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, we're very lucky to have Marshall Hunt, who is the Director of Tax Policy and Advocacy at the Accounting Aid Society, with us today. He's a true guru with over 34 years of experience in tax administration at the IRS and more than 20 years as a volunteer with the Accounting Aid Society before he joined them as a staff member. Marshall will be walking us through the process of completing the home heating credit in just a few moments. Who you're listening to now is me, Ryan Calmetto. I'm the Advocacy Manager at the AAA 1B. We serve Livingston, Macomb, Monroe, Oakland, St. Clair, and Washtenaw counties. I'm also a faculty member at Eastern Michigan University in both the Aging Studies program and the social work programs. And I'll be providing a bit of an overview of the Heat and Eat policy, which triggered some negative effects for older adults in the state in concern of their food assistance. Our objectives today are, one, to provide you kind of a high-level overview of the Heat and Eat policy and how it connects to the food assistance program benefits in the state of Michigan. And then second, the meat of the presentation will really be a focus on providing training on how to complete the home heating credit application form for single filers. I do also want to note on your control panel, there's a section called handouts, and in there you have both the actual PDF application for the home heating credit and you have the instruction booklet, which provides line-by-line instructions on how to complete it accurately and how to submit it. So first, to everyone's favorite thing, federal and state policy. So I'm going to provide, again, a high-level overview of the Heat and Eat policy and changes and how that's impacted low-income food assistance program recipients. So from 2010 to 2014, Michigan participated in the federal Heat and Eat policy, which was part of the Federal Agricultural Act, also known as the Farm Bill. Participation in this policy meant that all Michiganians who received any food assistance or food assistance program, FAP benefits, from the Department of Human Services also received a minimum of $1 in low-income home energy assistance program funding, which is also known as LIHEAP. So this $1 in LIHEAP funding actually triggered a standard utility allowance at the federal level. This standard utility allowance allowed the federal government to pair SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, with the state food assistance program benefits, providing increased support. So between 2010 and 2014, the average food assistance program participant received about $76.73 more each month in food assistance. However, in the 2014 reauthorization of the Farm Bill, Congress actually changed the heat and eat policy. So instead of automatically receiving a standard utility allowance with any amount of LIHEAP, so previously the $1 was applied, the threshold now for the standard utility allowance is anything over $20. So as such, Michigan chose not to continue participation in the heat and eat policy, citing that the increased cost to provide the standard utility allowance to all food assistance program beneficiaries would leave very little funding available for other energy assistance emergencies, which LIHEAP, the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, provides support for. I do want to note as an aside, several other states were looking at the heat and eat policy and how to best manage it, and there are several different models of how states are overcoming this issue. So if you have any interest in learning what other states are doing, or perhaps working with me to see if Michigan can take a different road in the future, please reach out to me after the webinar. So as a result of discontinuing the heat and eat policy in Michigan, approximately 18.2%, or about 160,000 food assistance participant cases, saw a reduction in their benefits. On average, the reduction in food assistance was about $76.73. Again, this depends on the household size and total household resources. There is, however, a solution to fix this problem of lost benefits. So anyone who is able to verify that they received over $20 in LIHEAP or other energy assistance programs, such as the home heating credit, can qualify for the standard utility allowance and thus increase their assistance benefits. Important to note that any recipient would then need to take their energy draft or their check that they receive for their home heating credit to the Department of Human Services to request a redetermination on food assistance. So the Area Agency on Aging 1B is really concerned about this potential loss of benefits for low-income seniors. Many low-income seniors no longer file taxes, so they're missing an opportunity to apply for the home heating credit, which could restore their lost benefits. So even if heat is included in the cost of someone's rent, you can still receive the credit. As a result, many seniors are missing their chance to apply for the energy assistance or the homestead credits, and possibly to increase their food assistance or lost benefits. So as such, the AAA-1B and the Accounting Aid Society teamed up to raise awareness on this issue. Now that you have an understanding of kind of the higher policy impacts and the connection to lost food assistance and the home heating credit, I'm going to turn it over to Marshall Hunt, again the Director of Tax Policy and Advocacy for the Accounting Aid Society, and he'll walk us through how to actually fill out the application itself. So just one moment, I'm turning over the screen to Marshall. All right, Marshall, do you have control?
That's what I'm trying to figure out here, Ryan. Just 1 minute.
Yeah, looks like you do.
Okay, there we go. I have control. Thank you. Ryan introduced me earlier. I'm Marshall Hunt with the Accounting Aid Society. With me in the studio today, the studio being my office with a speakerphone, is Kathy Holka. She's very experienced with state credit and other tax issues, so she's here as a technical backup, and also she helped produce the PowerPoint. This presentation is intended to assist with a basic home heating credit for a single filer. We'll talk about other filing statuses in a little bit, but what we're trying to do is help people who are trying to help others in senior assisted housing. Real important, we want to emphasize the heating credit because that's due by September 30th. There is no extension. I would urge anyone that is going to attempt to help somebody with the home heating credit to take a look at the instructions that are attached as a PDF to this presentation. It's only 9 pages, not really too technical, and if you haven't finished your summer reading yet, I would urge you to take a look at that. Some filers may also be eligible for a home heating credit, but that, for a homestead property credit, but that can be filed for up to 4 back years. There's a 4-year statute on that. Home heating credit must be filed by September 30th. So that's really important, and you can't go back on that one. I'd like to clear up a couple misconceptions that are out there. One, if you have a heating bill in your name, you're automatically going to get a heat credit, or if your heat's included in the rent, you can't get a heat credit. So let's take a look at that. Home heating credit is generally available to anyone who owns or rents. That means they own the homestead or are on the lease for an apartment, for example, in Michigan, and whose income is within the income limits. And they are fairly low, but we'll take a look at that. Real important though, only the owner of the homestead, or the person on the lease can claim the credit, even if the heat is in someone else's name. And we see that at our tax sites on occasion. The homeowner will come in, and for various reasons, the heat bill is in perhaps a nephew's name, or a grandson or granddaughter's name. And maybe they have to do that for other reasons, but for heating credit purposes, only the owner or the person on the lease can claim the credit. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Not available to full-year residents of licensed care facilities, and these are your nursing homes, adult foster care homes, and substance abuse centers. A subsidized senior citizen apartment, though, is not considered to be a licensed care facility. There are also special rules for individuals who still maintain a homestead, even if they're in a nursing home, or for a married couple where one is still in a homestead. There's also special rules for certain married taxpayers. Married joint living together is not significant, really different than a single taxpayer. You just combine their total household resources. But once you get into married taxpayers filing joint living apart, or any married filing separate situation, you have either an additional form or additional calculations that you need to do. When we say shared housing, that means housing where you have multiple owners or multiple individuals on the rent. If you just have somebody living with another person and only one is on the lease, for example, or the owner of the home, that is not shared housing. We'll see, though, any contribution from the other party will have to be added in to what we call total household resources. All right, the exemptions for the home heating credit are basically the same as on the Michigan individual income tax return. A couple of comments, though. Beginning with 2012, there's no longer an extra exemption for a senior. And an important point that is sometimes missed, even though someone is considered disabled or is disabled, unable to work, once they hit age 66 in that year, then they're no longer going to get an extra exemption for being disabled. That does not apply to being deaf or blind, but for disability, you must be under age 66. Another comment on exemptions. For heating credit purposes, to claim a child, they must live with you. For federal tax and for Michigan income tax, sometimes a non-custodial parent might be able to claim an exemption for a child if the custodial waives the child over to the other party. For heating credit, the children, you look at who is actually living with you. All right, we're going to look at total household resources, and we'll come back to it too. That's the base, the income base used to calculate the credit. It used to be called household income. Some who have been around a while probably are familiar with household income. The difference is total household resources does not allow losses from a business or rentals or royalties to offset other income. It includes both taxable and non-taxable income, and that's important. If you're filing a federal return, you're going to pick up the taxable items, then you also then have to add in any non-taxable income. I think if you think of THR as being pretty much anything you might receive, taxable or non-taxable, as income, you're on the right track. Now, I would urge anybody to take a look at page 4 of the instructions for a list of items included and not included, and then on pages 7, 8, and 9 for line-by-line instructions. One thing that is not included is food assistance. So you can keep that out of the calculation, but pretty much everything else is in, with some exceptions on certain things. We'll talk about that. All filers who are otherwise eligible, of course, can qualify for a heat credit based on a standard allowance if it's within the income range. The standard credit is the only computation available for somebody whose heat is included in their rent or in someone else's name. Filers with the heating bill in their name might also qualify for an alternative credit calculation. And we urge everyone in that situation contact their energy provider to get the amount billed. Now, taxes being taxes, it's not just a calendar year, it's November 1st, 13 through October 31st, 14. Generally, your heating bills for January through March should have a line item. It's usually in the fine print below the actual bill itself. And one last thing, in determining which you qualify for, you look at the situation you're in when you file for the heat credit. The problem is if you no longer have a heat bill in your name and you do the alternative credit, you're going to get an energy draft, which then, if you don't have an account to apply it against, becomes a process where you have to send that back to the state. Not a particularly efficient process. If you no longer have a heating bill in your name, you would do the standard allowance. Okay, these are the allowance amounts and the income ceilings. So you can see it starts fairly low if you have 0 exemptions, and it's possible for somebody to not be able to claim themselves and still get the credit, but there are exceptions for students. So the income limit is fairly low for somebody with 0 or 1, but as you have additional exemptions, it increases. Slightly different income ceilings for the alternative credit, but again, they're fairly low at the start, but increase with extra exemptions. For filers with their heat in their name, they're going to get an energy draft. For some providers, that most likely will be sent directly to the provider. For someone whose heat is included in their rent or in somebody else's name, for example, a nephew or grandson or granddaughter, they will get their credit as a check, and that can be directly deposited. All right, we're going to get into the CR7 form itself. Couple of important things. Always watch your name and social security number. I think, misprinting, mistyping a social security number is always going to cause you problems. The calls for a county code. There's a list in the instructions. In most cases, that should be the first 2 digits of a school district code that's used for the income tax return and the homestead property credit. In terms of filing status, single is no problem. Married joint, as long as the taxpayers are living together, not a particular problem. You have to add, of course, all of their total household resources. Once you get, though, into married filing joint living apart, or any of the married filing separate possibilities, they could be living together, they could be living apart. You've got additional calculations, and most likely you'll have to attach another form of 5049. Again, this presentation is intended for the typical single filer in adult subsidized housing, but it could apply to married joint living together. Residency status, if you're apart your residence, then you do have to do some prorations. Take a look at the instructions on page 6. Okay. All right. I hope I didn't jump ahead too many. Okay. All right. On the form CR7 page 1, there's some other boxes to check. Line 7, the wording of the form is not totally complete. It says, check this box if your heating costs are included in your rent. Well, that also applies if they are in somebody else's name. And by checking that box, then you will get the check and you won't get an energy draft. Line 8, we recommend checking that box. I don't know to what extent the state still uses that to provide information about other assistance programs, but I like to recommend it, but it's always the filer's choice, of course. Line 11, that's going to be checked if you have a heating bill in your name and the claim is for 12 months. Then you will enter your heating costs. And then exemptions, I would take a look at the form instructions on page 7. Again, we've already mentioned that disabled must be under age 66. There is no age requirement for a qualified disabled vet. That's basically somebody with a service-connected disability. And then the children, and then for other dependents, you have to follow the federal rules really for determining whether somebody can be your dependent. And that's another topic for another day at this point. But we'll take questions on any of this. Okay. Again, on the exemptions, that does affect the amount of your standard allowance, so that is important to get that down right. And again, you need to list the name, relationship, social number, that's important, age. And if you do have more than 6 to list, there's a form 4796 that the state provides. Okay, box 15. That's going to apply only to somebody with a heating bill in their name. So it wouldn't be applicable to anybody whose heat's included in a rent or in somebody else's name. Basically, in most cases, if you're not getting heating assistance in the last 12 months, you're going to get a refund soon after they apply the heat credit to any outstanding balance, assuming you have an overage. So if you have a heating credit amount of X amount and that more than offsets your current balance, you should get a refund. However, if you've had heating assistance, and that does not include the home heating credit itself, within the last 12 months, then you're going to be waiting 9 months to get it. But you need to check that box if you want a refund of any overage. Otherwise, it's just going to stay on your account and will offset future costs. Total household resources. This is a pretty good list in the form instructions. A couple things I do want to mention. Line 23, Social Security SSI. You want to reduce by any Medicare payments out of your Social Security. Also, some taxpayers can receive both Social Security and SSI, so you want to make sure you pick up all of those amounts. There's some other.
Go to the next slide.
Oh. Okay, I'm sorry, I was one slide behind. So you might be getting Social Security and Railroad Retirement or SSI, so make sure you get them all. Report the net after Medicare premiums. Line 26, gifts or expenses paid on your behalf. Technically, only the amount over $300 needs to be reported. This will usually come into play when family or friends is helping out with the costs of the homestead. Typical situation there is a single person who is on the lease or the owner as a roommate. And the roommate is not on the lease or an owner of the home. In that case, then any contributions by the roommate counts as other non-taxable income and is part of total household resources. Sometimes it's easier if you're also doing a homestead property credit because you can get a better picture of how much the taxpayer is spending on rent, for example. And you have to make sure you have enough total household resources to cover that. And sometimes it might be contributions from a roommate. The taxpayers receiving supplemental security income typically receive $42 every quarter from state SSI. That's $168 per year. That should be reported on line 29, and that would go with any other assistance from DHS, such as Family Independence Program. Okay. Other adjustments, if you're filing a federal return and you have adjustments on the front page of the 1040, that could be, for example, student loan interest, IRA contributions, things like that. Probably not going to be applicable to the taxpayers you're trying to serve. But if you're filing federal, those would come into play, and they reduce total household resources, which gets you a bigger credit. Medical insurance, you can add that in. Now you want to be careful to look for that. Many seniors, for example, may have supplemental coverage that they're paying for. You want to give them credit for that, reduces total household resources, bigger credit. The other thing I just wanted to mention, it's primarily been used by volunteer groups, but Michigan Department of Treasury has stated that someone with proof of Michigan automobile insurance will be able to deduct, or more properly, they wouldn't challenge an amount of $130 per insured vehicle for personal injury protection, even if it's not separately stated in the policy. That would generate an extra couple dollars of heating credit, but I didn't want to leave this out. And then the calculations. I would probably take a look at the instructions on page 9. Standard. Now the alternate, of course, is only applicable to somebody who has a heating bill in their name. And then you have special rules for less than 12 months, part-year residence, and shared housing allowance. And again, that comes into play if you have more than one owner of the home or more than one person on the lease. After reviewing the claim, the filer and the spouse, if applicable, should sign and date. You only need to sign as a preparer if you're doing this for compensation. And then the form should be mailed to the address at the bottom of the form. if it's being filed with a homestead property credit, it can go in the same envelope, but it should be separately, it should be not stapled together. Okay, direct deposit. We mentioned that if somebody has the heat included in their rent or in somebody else's name, they can get a check instead of a heating voucher. Michigan provides a form 3174 for direct deposit, and that should be attached behind the home heating credit claim. I wanted to make one quick note on the calculations. Once you've done the basic calculations, you'll see at the bottom of the form, line 44, there is a cutback, and that's based on federal funding available. This year it was 50%. That does vary a little bit year to year, but the form will take you through that. We'll take any questions you have. You can always contact me. Our contact information is there. Accounting Aid Society is open year-round. We serve Southeast Michigan. We not only help with tax preparation, we also have a low-income taxpayer clinic where we help with federal tax controversies. Taxpayers who owe the IRS are involved in exams or other collection activity. Okay, that's it for me right now.
Okay, Marshall, we do have a question here from Carla. It says, if you have a two-person household with only one vehicle, are you still only able to claim $130, or can it be doubled?
No, it's per vehicle. It's per vehicle, 130. And again, that basically Treasury is, this started a couple of years ago with some of the volunteer groups wanting to claim some amount for personal injury protection, which is included in your auto insurance bill. It's in there somewhere. I can't find it on my own, for example, but Treasury decided to come out with a position. It's not in the instructions that they would allow or not question $130 per vehicle. Now that would not be allowable for a federal itemized deduction. For example, it would not count as medical insurance for federal, but the state would not question or disallow $130 in that situation. It's per vehicle.
Great, thank you, Marshall. Do folks have other questions? I know that taxes can be a little bit intimidating, but we want to give you a chance to raise your hand or type questions if you have any. All right, seeing none, I hope that this webinar was helpful and brings you some comfort in helping folks in your buildings to apply for home heating credits. Again, this is a really important issue because so many seniors don't file taxes. They're missing the opportunity to restore lost food assistance benefits and receive a homestead credit. So these are really, it makes a huge difference. As I mentioned previously, the average reduction was about $76 a month in food assistance. So, you know, over the course of a year, that's really significant. We're talking something like almost $1,000 worth of lost benefits. So please, if you have any questions, you can always email me afterwards, or you have Marshall's information as well, so you can reach out to them at the Accounting Aid Society. I do want to thank you, Marshall, for all of your great information. It's been really a pleasure working with you. And for those of you on the phone, we did have some volunteers go out to a senior building from the Accounting Aid Society to actually help in the completion of tax credits. So we are working on this on many fronts. We will make a copy of the PowerPoint available. I'll actually send a link to this video presentation to all of the attendees' email addresses in just a few moments. I'll also include a PDF version of the PowerPoint slides for your access. And then once you do receive your home heating credit, again, you do need to go to DHS to ask for a redetermination. That was one last question that came through. So folks would need to reach out to their caseworker, provide evidence of the home heating credit, get the redetermination to have their food assistance restored. All right, so thank you all again for tuning in today. I hope this was very helpful, and I wish you the best of luck in helping to complete home heating credits for your folks. So thanks again, and stay tuned for an email with more information.
Thank you, Ryan.